Hello, everyone. It's so great to have you join us again for the second episode of this season of Be Heard TV. We have a great show planned for you tonight. Anyone who's unfamiliar with Be Heard TV, I'll just give you a little intro to what it is. It's an entirely youth-run web show. That means that the crew is made up of youth, and the show itself features the opinions and voices of youth and young people from our generation. Throughout the season, we're going to be broadcasting live shows on the internet to the entire globe, talking about some of the most pressing issues that face our generation. And tonight's topic, we're going to be talking about the drinking age. More specifically, we'll be talking about some new bills in Congress that would maybe lower the drinking age in the U.S. to 18. We'll be talking about how alcohol is marketed to teenagers and some of the health risks of a lower drinking age. We are doing the show tonight live in front of a live audience from the Youth Entity Center in Carbondale, Colorado. And the live audience will be contributing their questions and comments via a microphone that we have over there. We also encourage anyone watching on the internet to chime in as well by going and watching the show on www.beheardtv.com, but then simultaneously posting on the Be Heard TV Facebook page. And without further ado, allow me to introduce the final contributors for tonight's show, our four student panelists. Would you guys introduce yourselves?
I'm Nathan Buchanan, and I'm from Coleridge High School. And due to a deformity in my chest, I've had to get extensive surgery, leaving me in the hospital for 2 weeks. I had to get a NUS bar in place to my chest, and I still have the bar, and I have to hold it in for another 2 years.
I'm Jack Willis from Gilman Springs High School, and I was actually in a snowboarding accident one time where I almost broke my left ankle so bad that they had to do extensive surgery and could have lost a toe or something.
I'm Cindy from Roaring Fork High School, and I'm allergic to mangoes.
My name's Alyssa Zelina, and I write poetry, and I'm from Yampa Mountain High School.
Great. Thank you guys for coming on the show. It's great to have you. Thanks for sharing your interesting facts about yourselves. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first topic of discussion for tonight, which I think is one of the more pertinent and relevant to our generation because it directly affects us. We're going to be talking about how alcohol is marketed to teenagers. There's a lot of ways that this is done. There's actually most teens will have seen 75,000 ads by the time that they turn 21, which, as you can imagine, is kind of a drastic number. And actually, to get into some more specific figures before I open up the discussion to the panelists, was estimated in 2008 that teens saw an average of 301 television ads for alcohol every year. And what's even more interesting is that the study also concluded that this did correspond with the amount that those children drank. More specifically, for every one additional television ad they saw for alcohol, they drank 1% more alcoholic beverages. So I guess that the general question that I want to open it up with, and then we'll kind of see where it carries us, is your guys' takes. Do you think that these ads that are not designed for children necessarily, but have a great effect on children, do you think that that affects how much these kids are drinking?
Well, my personal opinion on how this affects, the ads affecting us as youth drinking. I don't think it's necessarily the ads that are getting us to drink. It's not like we watch an ad and we're like, oh, I want that beer, or alcohol or whatever it is. I honestly, personal preferences. It's older people and their not persuasion. They're peer pressuring us. That's the word I was looking for. To drink. It's not the ads, in my opinion.
So you think it's less the ads and more the adults around us who are influencing us to view alcohol and kind of put it up on this pedestal?
Yes, I the companies of these ads like Corona and such as I think they're honestly targeting the youth because of how naive we are to peer pressure.
Do you guys agree with that? Do you think that it's not an influence so much of the ads, but more of the adults around us who are indulging in it, or do you think that there is a direct correlation, as you know, as that study was saying, the one more ad led to 1% more drinking? Do you think that that is a direct result?
I think it's both the ads and the adults. I feel like, you know, the children are seeing the ads on TV and they're already curious about it, and then, you know, they see their parents or whatever adults are around them drinking the alcohol, and they're even more curious because, you know, they're doing it and they want to know what it's like and what, you know, why, you know, their parents are drinking it. So
It's a little bit of both, because the ads don't show the negative side of drinking. They just show the positive side. So kids see these ads for beer and they only show people having a good time while they drink. And of course it says you can only drink when you're 21, so that makes them want it even more, especially because they can't have it.
Well, actually, I'm glad that you guys kind of brought this up, talking about, you know, that it's not just the advertising, but also the culture that has been kind of inspired by adults. And I'd even go as far as to say there's a lot of role models, rappers and pop artists and people who are in popular culture today. They have music videos and appear in ads or just through their own kind of subculture. There is a certain degree where that alcohol is glorified in that culture. And, you know, these are role models and kids are kind of looking up to them. So how much of a percentage do you think that has an effect, these role models and kind of celebrities in society?
I think that we see that because of the media, and that through stuff like MTV, and we're going to see things like rappers and all them abusing alcohol and glorifying it. And I think that certain alcohol companies see that and how attracted we are to those kind of TV shows and things like that. So then they kind of put that into their commercials, into the media to glorify it. But I don't think they're ever directly marketing towards teenagers. I think they just glorify alcohol because, like you said, it's kind of been glorified in our culture, and I think they're just promoting their product.
Well, you're talking about that, you know, in this situation, it's not really being directly marketed to teenagers. So I'll try and go a little more into maybe something more specific that seems to be directly marketed to teenagers, and that is Alcopops. Alcopops is a term that is used to refer to very sweet, very sugary, colorful drinks that look like they're sodas that are, you know, being sold to kids in 7-Eleven or something like that, not like an alcoholic beverage. And to me, it seems like that's more of a drastic example of something that's actually seeming to be marketed to kids. Perhaps one of the more concrete examples of that is a specific one called Four Loko. And Four Loko. So Four Loko, it's a drink, as you kind of saw in there, that it's an alcoholic drink, but it looks like it's soda. It's in a can, and it's, you know, with the bright colors, and it doesn't look very dangerous. However, up until 2010, it was actually caffeine and alcohol. Up in 2010, they had to take out the caffeine, but even without it, it has as much alcohol in one can as an entire bottle of wine, which is kind of ridiculous. And the other thing about them is they're very cheap, about $2 to $4 usually, which, you know, is another great appeal to youth who typically have a lot less money than adults. So maybe it's just me, but to me that these seem like alcoholic beverages that are being directed towards people who are not legally allowed to be drinking them.
They're making it so easily accessible for us so that we get attached and to this alcohol, and that we can go to bigger products. And I forgot.
I feel like it's a tough topic because it does kind of seem like it would be more appealing to younger people, maybe people under the age of 21. But at the same time, a company is going to try and make what sells the best. So I don't think you can tell them not to sell those because it's a capitalist state and they're trying to sell what they can sell the most of. And if those are selling, then I don't think you can get rid of them, you know?
Well, what if they're selling very well, but they're selling and they're not actually being consumed by people who are of legal age, and rather are being consumed by minors? Shouldn't we be allowed to have some sort of control in that if there's a drink that is being consumed more by minors than by people over age?
I think we should have some kind of control over that, but that doesn't mean that we need to go do anything towards the seller. And you haven't said that, but I think that they should be available on the market if they want to sell them. That's their company and their product that they're trying to sell, and their commercials are obviously going to glorify their product. They're not going to make their product look bad. And so maybe what we need to do is crack down more on the distributors of it, liquor stores and stuff that are selling it, or just have stronger or more strict laws towards underage drinking, because their job is to sell it and market their product, and that's what they're doing. Just because they sell it and kids get their hands on it, I don't think you can blame them. They don't really have any part in that. There's middlemen, you know, before it gets to children, so it's not their fault.
But honestly, these distributors, they're doing as much as possible, because you can't go in as a 15-year-old and just buy alcohol. You obviously have to show your ID and do all this stuff, and you don't see, 17-year-olds stealing from these liquor stores. They have security, and everything. So I honestly think it's the older people that are giving the younger people the alcohol, so that ties into peer pressure as well.
So then maybe we should have harsher punishments for adults that sell alcohol to minors and minors that are in possession of alcohol, because I have heard people personally say, like, oh yeah, in court I just got 6 months of unsupervised probation and a little community service, no big deal, doesn't really affect you. So people are coming out of these punishments saying, oh yeah, no big deal, I got away with it. It's not looked at as something that you're really going to get nailed for in the law system, so maybe that's another approach we could take towards it.
And I completely agree with that, we are letting these kids off with such little, just 6 months with a person, prohibition. But we can't punish adults selling to minors, because how do you catch adults selling to minors? How do you know that when an adult walks into a liquor store and buys this alcohol that he's going to sell it to a minor or give it to a minor? That's my question.
Well, I'm hearing a lot from you guys about maybe some more aggressive law enforcement on the drinking age, which is interesting, because the next thing that I wanted to go into was talking about some talk in Congress about maybe lowering the drinking age in several states to allow 18 to 20-year-olds to drink in public.
It's been more than 2 decades since anyone under the age of 21 has been able to legally drink alcohol in the United States. But now changes may be on tap in some states, and the ritual of counting down to your 21st birthday could become history. The biggest hurdle facing those particular states, the federal government, which is dangling a giant golden carrot in front of its state lawmakers to keep the 21 to drink thing exactly where it is.
It's an age-old argument over age, the drinking age. In every state in the country, the law says you must be 21. But now 7 states are considering legislation to lower the drinking age to 18. Kentucky, Wisconsin, and South Carolina are proposing bills that would allow only members of the military to drink at 18. South Dakota, Missouri, Vermont, and Minnesota are considering measures to legalize drinking for everyone at 18. Those states are being applauded by youth rights activists.
The drinking age makes alcohol a forbidden fruit. It makes it sexy. It makes it, more desirable to go out and get trashed. And you don't see that as much in other countries around the world that have a drinking age of 18 or lower.
In an effort to reduce highway traffic fatalities among young adults, in 1984, Congress passed the Uniform Drinking Age Act.
So this is actually one of the very common arguments, you know, trying to attain the 18-year-old drinking age, that we're allowed to do so many things at the age of 18, including vote for who's the leader of our country, go to serve our country in the military, but we're not allowed to have a beer. So Cindy, I'll pick on you for a minute. Where would you stand on that? If you're 18, shouldn't you be allowed? If you're allowed to do all these other things that are service, shouldn't you be allowed to have a drink?
Yes, but I don't think underage drinking has anything to do with age. I think kids who are drinking know what they're doing. I mean, it's not really the law there's something wrong with the law. It's just, I think it's more of a parent view of how they're raising their kids and how they view drinking. And I think it's not specifically targeted just to laws and to adults. It's the kids also. I think they're aware of what they're doing when they drink.
So you're saying you don't really think it makes a difference whether or not we lowered it to 18 as far as like the amount of drinking that occurs? You don't think, or the type of drinking, like, you know, like binge drinking versus having a casual drink with friends, you don't think that is something that's affected by the age that the law puts on when you're allowed to drink?
I mean, it might, but even if you lower the age at 18, 15-year-olds still want to drink, and they're still going to do it.
Well, Jack, would you say that the laws are preventing those 15-year-olds from drinking? I mean, would there be a difference in the amount of drinking if we actually lowered the age from 21 to 18? Would it open it up for more, or would the people who've been drinking legally just now be drinking legally?
One question that I didn't quite get answered from that video, maybe I wasn't paying attention or something, but I want to know, are these laws these proposed laws saying that we should change the legal age of purchasing alcohol to 18 or only consuming?
As far as I'm aware, it's actually different depending on the states. Colorado, where we are, recently had a bill in Congress that was proposed by Greg Brophy that would allow parents to buy their 18-year-olds drinks in bars, and then as long as the parent is buying it, then the kids can have it. The bill actually got killed, but I know that in a lot of other states they have bills that would allow military service members to be drinking at the age of 18. So I think it depends really on which state which state's Congress the bill is going through.
And with this parent supervision, buying a drink for your kid at the bar, your kid isn't going to binge drink at the bar in front of all those people. He's not going to sit there and guzzle shots. He's going to have a light, you know, like wine of glass with your parent, and I agree with that.
Well, you say you agree with that, but I'm going to challenge you for just a second, because a big problem that a lot of the restaurants had with this is that they have no way to discern if it's actually the parent who's with the child when the 18 and up is getting the alcohol. So isn't there a danger in that instead of drinking responsibly with your parents, you just hire someone, or not necessarily hire someone, you find a friend who's over the age that they would conceivably be your parent, and they just come with you and buy you as many drinks as you want?
So, and then that's where they need to strict the law on saying it's a parent and maybe show an ID and not just a random guardian that's a friend that's over 21.
All right, I'm going to take a pause from this conversation because I think we have some input from the audience. Could I get your input?
Yes, my name is Felix Jimenez, and I had a question for you, Isaac. You said, how could we ensure that these kids aren't just going and finding some stranger to pretend to be their parents? Don't you feel like we could solve this by altering the current photo ID to include who that individual's parents are if they're under the age of 21? That way these kids we could make sure that these kids' parents are buying them drinks, not just any other person. Because I think these alterations really could make it more effective, the way we're dealing with things, so we don't have to inflict harsher punishments on kids, because these harsher punishments really could harm this child's future, don't you think?
So I'd like to just clarify your question here, Felix, really quick. You're saying that you think that on the identification that people have, it should include the names of their birth parents?
Up until the age of 21 to ensure that they can drink. Or this could be something that the 18-year-old asks to have put on their ID because they know they're going to go have drinks with their parents.
That's an interesting idea. Well, how about you guys? What do you think about that?
I completely agree with it. That is the only sensible way of controlling how people drink at bars and if they're really a parent or not, and that's the most secure, efficient way.
I think another option would just be simply both the parent and the child, or I guess not a child at 18, and the kid has to have an ID on them, and if they have matching last names, serve them a drink. I mean, if somebody's willing to search the streets for somebody with the same last name as them, then good for them. I mean, they probably could have got it some other way too. They're pretty determined. So I think that could be a less costly way. We wouldn't have to change anything, and I think that'd probably work.
So I guess I'll get back to the bigger picture question for a second. Coming back to, is this bill something important to us? For example, in Colorado, the bill did not make it through. It got killed in Congress, and it's not going to be processed through in this state. However, there are other states that are still considering similar bills. Is this a big enough priority? Do you think it will make enough of a difference in the way that we treat alcohol in our society that it will actually be worth it?
I think that kids, the way they are, they are curious, and they always want to do things that they know that they're not supposed to. They always want to, if it's something that's forbidden, they want to figure out why it's forbidden. And I don't think that any law is going to really change. Kids, you can find somebody to buy you alcohol and go to a party with your friends and drink, and that's just. I mean, it's not going to completely stop that. I think it's just going to keep going, and maybe your parents could buy you a drink in the bar, but you're still going to go drink with your friends. It's not really going to change much.
So you're saying the same people who are drinking in the bars are probably the same people who are going to be out drinking with their friends if the law isn't changed?
I mean, I think that, I don't know, maybe I think it might make more people start drinking if they know that their parents could buy them a drink or whatever, but they might be drinking more responsibly and they might be more safe, but I still think that other kids that don't have parents that are that are gonna buy them a drink in the bar, I think they're still gonna go out and drink with their friends.
So are you proposing that we do change the drinking age, or that we don't, or you just kind of both sides?
Saying that it doesn't really make a difference. Yeah. All right, I'm going to take a break from this conversation because we have some more input over at the microphone. Could you introduce yourself and then ask your question?
Yes, my name is Alex Parrish, and to go back to your question, Isaac, on if it's completely worth making the drinking age to 18 for our country, I believe it would. It's obviously, if you lower the drinking age, it's going to open up more people to purchase alcohol. And I feel like the advertisements that you were showing us earlier about the Four Locos, and I think Alka-Pops is what you used, on more towards taste. I feel like that's more appealing to younger kids, like 18-year-olds and everyone who would be able to drink if that was passed. And I think these companies would be making a lot more money if it was the drinking age was lowered, because it'd be more people to be able to purchase it, and I just wanted to know what you guys had to think about that as well.
So, yeah, I'll open up. Go ahead, Jack.
My biggest thing with changing the drinking age to 18, and we never really clarified if any states are proposing that we allow 18-year-olds to purchase their own alcohol, but my biggest problem with that is just that 18 is still a high schooler, and I feel like that would open up a way bigger door of opportunity to younger high schoolers that are not 18 yet to drink. Because I just think that would happen. I don't think if you went up to your senior buddy and said, hey, will you, buy us some stuff, I don't think they'd say no. I don't think high schoolers have good enough decision making to say no to that.
That's a really good point, Jack, and actually moves me very well into the next thing that I want to talk about, which is some of the health risks of having a lower drinking age, such as 18. For example, the body is not yet done developing in 18. In fact, for the most part, it doesn't finish developing until about 23, specifically the frontal lobe in the brain. The frontal lobe, when a child is about the size of a pea, and it doesn't actually grow into its full size, which is about the size of a plum, until you're 23. And the frontal lobe is in charge of a lot of the decision-making processes, and it's one of the reasons why young people are always doing stupid stuff, is because we're not capable of making good decisions yet. So lowering the drinking age down to 18 would open up, to a certain degree, the ability for these stupid kids to be using this substance, which only further impairs them. Do you think that that's a fair argument against it, or no?
I think that's a fair argument. You know, alcohol affects, you know, your body in pretty dramatic ways, and you know, when your body's still not developed, it affects it even more, because you know, it's still trying to develop, and then it'll, you know, be damaged for the rest of your life, and you won't have the full capability to, you know, make smart decisions, and then, you know, it'll be all messed up.
I kind of agree with that, because I think kids learn as they grow. So if they knew what alcohol did to them, or if they were accustomed to having alcohol around at a young age, they knew what the effects were. So it'll be like, if they're 15 and their parents are away and they get drunk on their parents' stash, they get really drunk, and they might learn that they don't like to get drunk, and they might not do it again. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. The earlier that, you know, kids have a bad experience with alcohol, the more likely that, you know, they're going to realize that these are the consequences of drinking. So are you suggesting maybe that's like a teaching method, is to give them a bad experience and then see if that's actually capable of deterring them? Like, should we be giving alcohol to 15-year-olds and then seeing how they handle it?
No, but I think kids are capable of learning from their mistakes. And even as a kid, I remember I touched something hot and I got burned. I never touched that thing ever again, even if it was off. So, I mean, if they're around things, and like I said again, if they don't just announce alcohol as being good and getting drunk and with your friends, if they announce, like, or if they tell you the bad stuff around alcohol, I think kids will be more informed and they would know more about it.
I feel like they should have commercials, instead of just commercials, you know, promoting the alcohol and making it seem like, oh, it's just a fun time, you know. I think they should also have commercials, you know, telling you about the effects of alcohol and, like, you know, the dangers, and, you know, maybe it might scare kids a little bit into, you know, not really trying it, you know, because you know, they're showing them that it also has bad effects.
So I'll take another quick break from this conversation to go to the microphone. Could you state your name and then give your input?
I'm Shay Gianetti, and I was just wondering if you guys thought that we should sacrifice our kids' health in order to teach them a lesson.
So I think that kind of goes back to what Cindy was saying earlier, where, you know, if you give the kids a bad enough experience with it one time, maybe they get the education that this is something that they should avoid. Is that a fair trade-off? I mean, it sounds kind of radical, but that is kind of partially due to the way that we've been raised in our culture. Is it something that would be effective, and is it worth it?
Not necessarily getting your kid drunk until he passes out, but I read online that moderate drinking doesn't affect the kid in any way, and it doesn't affect your brain in any way. So if you moderately drink throughout time, you might get used to it, or, you know, not have that big curiosity of drinking in high school until you're 21 or 18. So
I'm pretty sure I've seen studies, though, that suggest that the earlier you start drinking, the more likely you are to become addicted to it. And I think our culture fails to remember sometimes, but alcohol is extremely addicting, and there's plenty of people out there that are alcoholics and ruin their lives with alcohol. And I just, kind of like what Shay said, I don't know if we should risk our kids' health and safety just on a big maybe. Like, I completely understand what you're saying, and it makes sense. I just think that's kind of a big maybe. Maybe we shouldn't just do that. You know?
Yeah, I I mean, it is a big maybe, but kids should also learn to be informed. I know I like to Google a lot of things I don't know, so I am pretty informed. And if you know, keep them informed about alcoholics as well, and if they could become addicted. I know I was raised in a household with an alcoholic parent, and I don't like to drink because I've seen it firsthand. So it's just from knowledge and experience, maybe.
And that makes sense to me, but you're just one person. We got to look at the bigger picture here as the country as a whole. And yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to kind of jump off what Jack's saying and try to, you know, poke some holes in your argument as well. That going back to this frontal lobe thing, at this point in time, kids are still stupid and aren't as capable of making the connection between, you know, even though I had a bad experience, because we're not fully developed in our minds. A lot of the time, people still do it again because the decision-making process it's not at its full capacity because the full frontal lobe isn't fully there. So really, to a certain degree, it doesn't make a difference because the kids are to a certain degree incapable of realizing the consequences of that mistake.
I mean, from what I'm getting out of what you're saying is that we make bad decisions sober, let alone impaired. So I think when you're intoxicated, that also leads to a whole new set of trouble. I mean, kids are more likely to take part in unprotected sexual experiences and stuff like that, and people are more likely to be violent and get in fights, and I just don't think anything good comes from it. And if you truly only want to drink because you like the taste of a drink, not to become intoxicated, we already have laws that say your parents can give you a drink inside your own household. And so you can already do that. I don't see why we need to lower the drinking age and make it more available to a wider variety of younger children.
I think honestly what we need is more alcohol education, like how before you get your driver's license you have to take a course on, you know, how to drive, what are the consequences of, you know, making a bad decision behind the wheel. And I think that's what we should have with alcohol is like take a class for alcohol and have like an alcohol license per se, and then when you do make a stupid mistake like binge drink or like pass out or, you know, something unlawful, that they take away this license, you know.
Cindy, I thought I kind of saw you squirming a little bit during that. Is that something you have a problem with? The idea of having like a driver's permit, a driver's license? Why not an alcohol permit and an alcohol license?
No, I just squirm. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. My misinterpretation. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move along. We've been talking a lot about, you know, the health effects of having a lower drinking age such as 18. However, there are a lot of countries where the drinking age is 18. There are a lot of countries where the drinking age is lower than 18. And honestly, you don't see a whole lot of excessive, you know, mental defects in these countries. It doesn't seem to have made that much of a difference. So I don't know whether that's a cultural thing. Maybe it's that the culture views drinking differently, or if the frontal lobe argument is a bit of an urban legend. However, I'd like to go now into a video, the compliments of Erin Shear, and it's actually about that topic. It's a girl who grew up in Britain and then came to America, and some kids who've grown up and, you know, lived in America, and they'll be talking about the differences in between you know, the attitude towards drinking in Britain and the attitudes toward drinking in the United States.
Is it working? Are young adults under 21 drinking or not?
We need to enforce the law. The 21 law works.
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't keep kids from drinking. In fact, if anything, it fosters really dysfunctional and self-destructive drinking habits.
Yeah, okay. Age 16 is like, yeah, let's go get trashed. Like, yeah, mates, we're gonna go get trolleyed. Like, everybody does that, but it's just, you grow up treating alcohol differently. It's not a status symbol. It's not like, oh, cool, you're 18, you can drink. Like, here, if you go somewhere, you can't casually have a drink with someone. Everyone's playing a drinking game. They can't just casually have a drink. We're a lot sketchier here. I think it's creating a really negative, like, connotation with alcohol, and it's making it seem like the only purpose for it is so that you can get messed up and go have a good weekend. And that's not what it's about.
When you tell someone, especially a teenager, you can't do that, and it's something they're like curious about, it makes them want to do it like 10 times more.
I progressed from like the whole, you could have a sip of wine at dinner to a sip of wine, like a sip of wine at Christmas, sip of wine at like special dinners, and you go up and up and you get like a small glass and then a glass. So I basically was introduced to alcohol through wine, through my parents.
I could vote. I'm 18. I've been to Europe. I've lived by myself.
You can die for your country at 18.
You let them control a vehicle that can kill multiple people at 15.
If we've decided as a culture that you are an adult, at that point, I see no reason to say you're an adult in every conceivable domain except for that one.
It's taught me to be shady, I feel. It's taught me to lie.
It just puts drinking up on a pedestal.
Everybody does it, and yet we're doing something wrong.
So I really want to focus kind of on the last little section that they were talking about. There was a young man talking about how the way that we treat alcohol in the United States is kind of put it on a pedestal and made it a bigger deal, whereas the girl who grew up in Britain talked about how she was kind of, subtly introduced to alcohol through wine with her parents, which is kind of something we've already been talking about tonight. And it's not viewed as much as a method for getting messed up as it is just for part of a social experience. So I guess the big question that I want to start with, and then we'll see where it goes from there, is asking you if you think that is a result of the drinking age. Is it because that the drinking age is lower that it's treated as less of a big deal, or are we kind of doomed in this country to forever treat alcohol as a bigger deal than other countries?
Well, I believe that we treat alcohol as a bigger deal than other countries because America, we drive everywhere. Like, there's not a place, like, I had to drive to get here. Like, in places like Germany where they don't have, like, hardly any alcohol problems is because we drive a lot more than the rest of the countries. And why? And so alcohol consumption is a problem is because we decide to get behind the wheel while we're impaired.
So you're kind of focusing, it seems, on the driving aspect of it, that because we drive so much in the country is why we have such a bigger problem with kind of some of the accidents. But I'm talking even more specifically than that, like with binge drinking, because there are contrasting studies. I'll clarify that, but the culture in Europe seems to treat binge drinking differently than in the United States, which seems to have had more of a negative effect. Like here, if kids are drinking and they're under 21, sometimes if there's someone who gets too drunk at the party, the people don't want to take them to the hospital or don't want to tell anyone because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble for drinking underage, which can be extremely dangerous for this person who has clearly over-imbibed. So kind of keeping it behind closed doors, is that a detriment to our society that isn't present in other cultures, as she was kind of talking about in the video?
Yeah, the sense of breaking a rule, like, thrives a teenager. You're like, oh, I'm drinking, and, when you're 18, you have a sense of you're adult, except for the fact that you can drink. And so that just only makes you want to drink more because you think you're an adult, well, because you're considered an adult, but, like, except for that fact that you can't drink alcohol. So behind closed doors with their friends, and they'll try to drink as much as possible in that short amount of time because they're not able to drink in restaurants with their parents.
I think there's more things than people think that you're restricted from doing when you turn 18, that you have to wait until you're older. We just don't remember those things because alcohol has been so glorified through our media. And I'm not talking about just the commercials that these companies put out, because I already said that I think they should be allowed to promote their product in ways that they can. But just through like MTV and those kind of TV shows, they truly do glorify binge drinking. And even when they do show the consequences, they don't, I don't know, they still put a positive, funny edge to it. And I think that's where it comes from in our culture, that why binge drinking is bad here. And then I think as far as saying because we can't do it, that's why we do it. I think that's an invalid point because there's plenty of things that the law says is illegal that we can't just make legal because people want to do it. There's plenty of other drugs that are illegal, and maybe people do want to do them because it's illegal, but that doesn't mean that we need to make them legal. Just because somebody wants to do it doesn't mean they get to do it.
That's a good point, Jack. You know, someone in the video was talking about that too. How, you know, you tell somebody you can't do this, and especially with teenagers, there's nothing you can do more that makes them want to do it. For example, Cindy, if I said to you, you can't wear those shoes on the show tonight, what kind of reaction do you have to that?
I want to wear more.
What if somebody said you can't wear your hat or chew gum on a show? You know, you're not gonna want to put up with that, but sometimes you just have to because that's what the law says.
And so, Jack, what I heard you arguing is, you know, that's not something that's exclusive to alcohol. And if we're going to make that a maxim, we're going to make the rule that because people want to do this and are going to do it whether you tell them to or not, we should make them able to do it. And you were talking about, well, there are a lot of more dangerous drugs that people are told they can't do, and, well, guess what? They want to do them, but obviously we can't make all of those legal. So you were arguing this earlier, so what makes alcohol different than those other drugs that Jack was talking about that means that the law should be used differently in this situation?
And I think it has to do with the fact that they're glorifying alcohol. Like you don't see a ad saying, you know, do heroin, you know, because it's a fun time. You know, I feel like we're required to take a health class, and we learn about drugs and how bad they are for you. And I feel like it's education. Like we don't really have drinking education. I mean, we know it's bad for you, but we don't know, like, you know, what it really does to us, like drugs.
Well, and like, if I say, hey, take these Vicodin pills right now, you know, people take Vicodin for problems all the time. I mean, I wouldn't think that was going to kill me or do anything bad to me like some of those other harder drugs, but because alcohol has been so glorified through our TV shows and stuff that we watch every day, you don't think it's that bad. You're just like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. So people say, you can't do that, but you're like, oh, I see that on TV all the time. Of course I can do that. You don't see people popping pills and stuff like that can be non-destructive, just like alcohol, but can also be extremely destructive towards your body, like alcohol.
Jack, I like where you're going with that. Particularly, we've been talking a little bit, and we got a little bit in here into, you know, education about alcohol and some of the health risks of alcohol. And one of the points that actually didn't make it into the final video, but was in the video that I thought was really interesting, is it's talking about how the overdoing the threat of alcohol has the adverse effect of what we want. And I think that's to a certain degree true. When people in these health classes are talking only about the negative aspects and how alcohol is terrible for you, children are usually smart enough to realize that, well, yeah, but there are some exceptions. For example, red wine is very good for the blood. It's very healthy, and I don't think anyone can deny that for a lot of people, alcohol enhances their experience and their enjoyment of certain situations. So do you think that one-sided sort of education about alcohol is dangerous in terms that it's kind of making the kids realize that they're kind of being fed lies? Do you feel like you get an accurate vision of alcohol from these groups that are teaching you to, you know, stay sober?
I see your point. I just don't really know how to respond to that because looking at other drugs that you learn about in health class, they don't tell you the positive sides, and some would say there's not any positive sides, but you know, there's plenty of party drugs out there that you can do, and people have a blast. It's the best time of their lives, but do we really want to teach people that? And I'm not saying we shouldn't, I just don't know if that's the best option, that we should be glorifying it through school too. And I think it's important to show both sides of an issue, but I don't know if we should anyway. It's tough.
I think what he's saying about glorifying it, they show, like I said before, they show only the positive stuff and not just drugs and alcohol, but other stuff. Like, kids have been doing like the cinnamon challenge and stuff online, and they're like, hey, let's do that. So it's the same with drinking. They see other kids drinking, they're like, hey, so we're gonna do this. But they don't show like the negative sides. Like we had a lady go talk to us at school, and she said that kids have actually died from the cinnamon challenge, and I didn't know that. So I think it's just not very well informed on both sides.
And this is great because it seems like we're starting to transition into my favorite section of the show. We've been talking a lot about some of the problems that we're facing, the issues that need to be solved, and we've talked a little bit about some solutions. But I'd like to go a little deeper into that and start talking on a more productive level about what sorts of changes can we, as the generation who's going to be in control in several years, what sort of changes can we start making now that kind of fight back against binge drinking and that sort of culture?
I think whatever restrictions we have on alcohol, people are still going to get it. Just like in the 1920s when Prohibition passed, like they said alcohol was completely illegal, and yet they saw an increase in drinking with speakeasies and which were underground like clubs where they would get their alcohol, which would be transported from other countries. So obviously that hasn't worked. So I honestly think whatever we do to try to stop alcohol, people are still going to get their hands on it. So the best thing that I honestly think we need to do is have more education on alcohol.
Well, I feel like with the education on alcohol, like, I feel like they shouldn't teach you that, if you have one drink one time, it's gonna, make you an alcoholic or kill you. I feel like they should teach you that, drinking in moderation, it's not always, it's not good, but, it's better than, getting trashed or, they shouldn't teach you that, one drink is gonna kill you. And they also shouldn't say that, it's good, because it's not. But I think they should teach, drinking in moderation.
So what you're kind of recommending is something kind of like, similar to sex education, how, of course, abstinence is the best, but being realistic, there are other measures that can be taken that are better than worse. So something like that, teaching that don't drink at all, that's the best option, but being realistic, you're probably going to drink growing up. So if you're going to drink, you should do it in moderation and teach people how much alcohol is in different drinks, such as those Locos or whatever it was. Show kids what drinks are more dangerous than others, and just more of an education system towards both sides, which I think to a certain extent we already have. I feel like they taught me some of that in health class, but maybe they could go more in depth with it.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to agree with you on what you're saying there, Jack. That I think that that's something that's kind of in place. I do agree that there is a lot of one-sided education, and I hear a bit of a call for like more of an even balanced teaching both sides of the coin, both that alcohol is dangerous and it's likely that you're going to drink anyway. So here's how to be safe about it. But from what I'm hearing, a lot of this seems to be somewhat, at least, already in place. What sorts of things that aren't in place? Because obviously it isn't working perfectly how we have it now. What other things, ideas you guys have, even if it's radical, even if it's far out? This is the place to kind of work these ideas out.
I think we do a lot of promoting the really bad stuff about drinking and the really good stuff. I think we should find a median between that and not just be like, oh, you drink and you get really messed up and you die, or you don't drink at all and you're a saint for life. But there should be like a median in between that. And if, like, I'll bring it up again, the drinking in moderation, that might be a median, but like you said, that might not work either. But there's multiple possibilities that can work as medians for drinking.
I wouldn't expect alcohol companies themselves to show negative sides to their product, because their main focus is to make money. But kind of like what she touched on earlier, maybe something like public service announcements on TV, live above the influence, stuff like that. We could just kind of throw that into TV, showing you the negative sides, because I don't think anybody can expect alcohol companies to show those negative sides, because their job is to make money, and they're going to represent their product in the best way that they can. Of course, they're going to glorify their alcoholic products.
Well, Jack, you're talking about how, and you've been kind of saying this all night, that, companies should be allowed to show their product in the best light. They should be allowed to try and sell their product. And, I tend to agree with you, but there are certain circumstances where these ads for alcohol are being placed in magazines or on television programs that, honestly, the viewership is kind of slanted towards younger generations. So should we be allowed to have more of an enforcement on, deciding where these ads are placed, so that if they're going to glorify their product, they're not glorifying it to 18-year-olds, they're glorifying it to 21 and up 21 years and up, who are actually able to buy their product legally.
I think it's hard to differentiate between shows that are being watched by 18-year-olds and adults, because by the age of 18, some people are watching higher intellectual shows, or even just same shows that any adult would watch. But I think we could put some minor limitations on it, as to, we don't want to see hard alcohol commercials on Nickelodeon or Disney Channel, and I don't know if that's legal right now or not, but I think small limitations are okay. I just don't think we can tell these companies that they cannot promote their product on TV, which is one of the biggest ways, if not the biggest way, to promote your product as a company.
Yeah, I do believe that we should be able to promote our product, such as like alcohol, because of how, capitalistic we are. But I think they should have some censorship on their commercials.
So it looks like what I'm mainly getting from the group is that we're looking for more balanced education, more education overall on the effects, both negative and positive, of drinking alcohol. And also a little bit more control over where the ads are being placed, and who these advertisements are being viewed by. So I'd like to thank you guys for your input. That's really one of my favorite parts of the show, is talking about these solutions for the future. I'd like to thank all four of you for coming on to the show. I think it was a really good conversation, and it's really what the goal of Be Heard is to kind of formulate these ideas, to talk about these issues, and then to come up with some solutions, because eventually we are going to be the people who are in leadership roles in the country, and it's important that people know what we think at this time, where we should go in the future. So once again, thank you all for coming. Thank you, audience, for coming to watch the show. It went really well. I'd like you all to tune in next week for our show upcoming this next Tuesday. And I hope to see you all there. So we'll see you next week. Thanks so much, and have a good night.
I just want